It is September wrap-up time, and I'm filming this after a very long day at work, but I just ate some really good food, so I'm ready to just chill with you guys and talk about all these books. I read a bunch of them. I read 13 books, 5 of them were audio, about 3,000 physical pages were read in the physical reads, although I do have 400-ish pages that were in the books carrying over into October. You can check out the October TBR for that if you're curious. And yeah, like I do in every wrap-up, I group things into categories because that's fun for me, and this time I have like a thematic category and some genre categories. Per usual, you can find all the timestamps, relevant reviews, any channels I mentioned in the description. And let's get into it. I really enjoyed basically everything I read this month. I don't think anything got below 4 stars. It was pretty great, and audiobooks were like, they were the key. So the first category is my more thematic one, and it's very seasonal. So this is like familial haunting. I don't know if familial haunting is the actual label I'll put here, but that's like what I'm feeling. That's like the vibes. Starting with The Inheritance of Orquídea Divina by Zoraida Cordova. I have a review, so I will put that in the cards if you want all 10 minutes worth of my thoughts. But in brief, this is definitely good for this category. You have a family that is being told that their matriarch is going to pass away and to come collect their inheritance. And there's always been this vibe in this family that the matriarch has powers. There is some magic involved. This is a very soft magic system. It's very whimsical. It's not very well explained. And although there's definitely some mysteries there, the mysteries in this story, the reason why, like, for me, I was engaged, had less to do with the magic and more to do with how did Orquídea Divina get to this land? What was her history? What is the family now involved with because of past deeds of family members? So you just get all of this cool familial theming of like how much of your identity is yourself versus the burden of family, the idea of belonging and which land one belongs to. You know, is it your ancestral land? Is it where you are now? There's a lot of really cool stuff there. And I also just thought that the mystery part was like really fun. I loved the characters. Like I say in my review, the characters are the highlight of the show. So good. So it definitely works for a fall read. I mean, you could read it any time of year, but if you like your atmospheric mystery short fall reads, you want to read it on a weekend, do it. It's a fantastic time. Another one that I think is incredibly vibrant and atmospheric is Migrations. This is a story about a woman, Franny, who is traveling from the Arctic to the Antarctic to watch the last turn migration, maybe, because this is a near future dystopian. It's not a sci-fi book at all, but it is a near future dystopian setting where we're in the 6th mass extinction, I think it is what it is. Whatever mass extinction we're currently in, we're further into it. So wildlife isn't really a thing anymore. This is still very much a literary fiction piece of work, but it is such a page turner. There's so much tension as you try to figure out, why did Franny choose to be on this journey? What happened in her past that led her to this part? There's a lot of really good like team dynamics on this ship that she gets on to go on this journey, so you get a lot of that like close-knit crew dynamics that I really appreciated. It was tense. I wouldn't say it was a thriller, but I read like a third of it straight in a night with no interruptions. This was also one that I immersion read, so I had the audio and physically read it at the same time, which I really liked the audiobook. I think it really brought a lot of the team members to life because the narrator was able to use the accents that they would have had because everyone's from different countries. So yeah. Also, if you've always been looking for characters and authors from Australia, this is an Australian author, and the main character is Irish-Australian, which I thought was interesting and cool, and another kind of discussion on belonging. And there's definitely familial haunting parts as you uncover Franny's past and why she's doing what she's doing and why she keeps searching for things. It's really good. Again, another short one, and I think this one works for both fall and winter, especially with the cold vibes that this story gives off. The third one I'll talk about is Summer Sun. So this is one that I don't think you guys have really heard me talk about on the channel except for maybe a recent tag video. And this one is an arc I read. It's very dark academia, like extremely. And although the cover makes it look very creepy, it is kind of creepy, but I don't think it's like as creepy as the cover. But again, I always say I don't have as visual or vibrant of an imagination, so there are definitely things that could have been described in a way that would be more terrifying to other individuals than they were for me. This story also had Fast and Furious vibes, which I think is a thing that people talk about in marketing. I just missed it because I'm not very good at researching a book before I read it. But you have these, you have this man, Andrew, and he's traveling to Nashville because he was supposed to go there for grad school, and before he gets there, his best friend commits suicide, and they were supposed to live together and go to grad school together, and he spends most of the story trying to figure out what happened, because he doesn't think it was a suicide. And there's also some paranormal baggage, for sure haunting. It's for sure familially related, and so that's why it's in this category. And in the process, we are exploring lots of themes of queer identity, toxic masculinity, again, belonging. It's a big one here. And it has a lot of the other trappings you find in a dark academia, which is looking at corruption in academic institutions. I'm sure there's more to it than that. I've only read a handful of dark academia books in my life. I really liked it. It wasn't perfect, and I don't have good enough thoughts to make a cohesive review. I am going to link Audrey from Perpetual Pages' Goodreads review, and they did a video on 2 Dark Academia reviews down below, because I think their words are just very good for describing what this story is about. If you want to just know my feelings, I at first didn't know if I was liking it, but I couldn't stop reading it, and then I got really connected to Andrew, because he's not a very likable protagonist, but he's a very relatable protagonist. And then there were elements that came together in ways that I found really unexpected. So I don't think people who like traditional like thrillers or fast-paced spooky reads will like the pacing in this, but I thought the slow pacing was so important to my buy-in to caring about Andrew and this group of people, and like, I don't know, I think if it went any faster, I would not have enjoyed this story, because I think the actual plot of it, I cared about so much less than the relationship development and this community of guys. And yeah, there was just so much that I really enjoyed consuming while I consumed it. So that's probably about as concise as I'm going to get. Again, Audrey, down in the description, they are way more eloquent than me. And the last one is the book I finished on September 30th. I read it like it was the last 4 days of the month, and I'm like, guys, I still have to finish 2 audiobooks, but do we think I can start and finish Folklore? And Abby told me to finish the books I had, which I did do, but I also started Folklore. This is a book that I picked up because the author's name is Angela, and because the main character is a physicist. That's why I did it. I did expect this to be more of a contemporary story with fantastical elements, and that's exactly what it was. This is more akin to Migrations in terms of like, that's a dystopian story, but it's really more literary. And that's how I felt with this one, where technically there are fantastical elements, but it's really about like familial trauma and how that can be passed down the generations, about your ancestry, specifically through the Korean lens. We have really a lot of different angles, and I was kind of annoyed that I didn't end up reading this when I read, I'll put an image here. It was a memoir I read back in May for the Asian Readathon, which was about a Korean woman who was adopted by white parents in America. This also deals with Korean adoption in Sweden, and that was really fascinating. And then you also just have a first-generation immigrant story of this daughter whose parents immigrated to America and what they had to deal with during the Korean War. So there's all of those trappings around, and the story says there's going to be Korean folklore. I mean, the title is called Folklore, and kind of it's this daughter processing her grief and changing positions in life through the process of remembering and connecting to her mother and how her mother told her stories. And it has some haunting aspects to that, and I really loved diving into these stories. And there's a lot of discussion about why are these stories passed on? Why are these stories framed the way they are? Like, why specifically are these endings for all these female characters always so tragic? So I really liked it. I don't know. I can't. Again, this was another one where don't come for it for the plot. I wouldn't come to it for the plot. And their relationships were so interesting. And the main character of this one is abrasive in a great way. I don't know if that's the right way to put it, but I really liked her. She definitely did things that made sense with her character once it was put into place, but there were many, many times that when she did something, I was like, ooh, that is not how I would have handled that situation, but I get it. I'm me, you're you. So I really liked Folklore. I wouldn't pick it up, though, if you wanted something more fantasy-driven, because I know for me it was shelved in my fantasy section. Which, fair, it has some fantastical elements, but this, for me, I don't know, like, it's not quite like The Bear and the Nightingale where it still had fantasy tropes and trappings. This was more like a contemporary novel, in my opinion. So that's kind of my fall section. And now let's get into my sci-fi reads. So I had a fair few sci-fi reads because it was Sci-Fi September and Space Opera September, and I just like reading sci-fi. So first one I'll talk about is Hyperion by Dan Simmons. I have a whole book club discussion, spoiler-filled, with Alan and Evie on Alan's channel, so that'll be linked down below. This was a reread. On my first read, I gave it 4 stars. On my second read, I gave it 4 stars. So nothing much has changed there. I think I'm better at honing into why this can't be a 5-star book for me, but I also appreciate it way more than I did my first read. There's still definitely choices and things that Dan Simmons does with this work that like just don't always work for me. I think that just comes with the territory of you're going to write 6 different genre short stories. Some of them aren't going to work, right? Like they're all very tonally different, structurally different. I like most of them for the most part, and they all really do help form this incredibly intriguing mystery. I cannot wait to read the sequel. So if you're someone who wants to read this, I actually do recommend buddy reading it with people. I think the channels are still up in the Shelf Space Discord if you want to see what people were thinking as they read it along, because I think it's one that is enhanced with discussion. I mean, I think a lot of books are, but this one for sure you'll find references that you missed if you're with someone who has a background in different parts of literature. You can, hypothesize and talk about why do we think this is happening, because it's sci-fi, but a lot of the mysteries just feel so supernatural and weird. So I like it. I can't wait to get to the sequel. A little bummed that it didn't quite make 4.5 or 5 stars, but like he just had some writing style decisions that just like don't work for my like enjoyment. Although the end of that book, so good. Another book that I read, Symbiosis. I have a review for the whole series for Escaping Exodus. I love this duology. I love it a lot. It has like no reviews on Goodreads. That's a lie. It has like less than 500 though. It has very few reviews. The covers are stunning, and I really like the project of these books. They are fast-paced sci-fi, which normally is miss for me these days, but they work for me. You have in both books, and specifically in Symbiosis, 2 great flawed individuals to follow as the plot takes these twists and turns, as they're just trying to figure out in their positions of power how to both be fulfilled as individuals, but make sure that like they do the right thing that is both right morally, but right also for people, which is not always the same thing. Oh, it's so cool. If you haven't already heard me talk about this series, you're on a space beast. This is past the point where humans can live on Earth anymore, and we basically use these beasts in space until they no longer live anymore, and then we go to the next space beast. And the first book talks about a transition from one beast to the other, and this one, I can't really talk about what it's talking about without spoiling the first book, but we're still in space. We're still looking at these really cool cultures with these really vibrant characters. I really, really like these books, so please check out that series review if you want to know more. And then I read We Are Satellites. This was my patron buddy read, so we vote for a book each month that we buddy read together, and I make a spoiler vlog that people can look at their leisure. I put timestamps when I get to certain parts, so if you want to like read along with me. This one was fun. I liked this one a lot. I think the ending was the part I didn't love as much as I wanted to like it. I think the ending had a little bit of like, I don't know, everything was so realistic up to the end, if that makes sense. Like, everything felt like such a good societal study in how this implant that you put in your head would allow you to multitask perfectly, but not everyone can get it if they have certain neurodivergent things, or if you have seizures. Like, there are certain medical conditions or brain states that wouldn't work with this transplant. But the majority of people could get it even for free or cheap. It was accessible financially. And what does that do to society and how quickly that developed? And you follow it through the lens of this family unit. And I love this family unit. The family unit itself is kind of split in the half of who uses and doesn't use the transplant and have different relationships with it. It's a wonderful story. I really did enjoy the majority of it. And if you are a sci-fi newbie, I actually really recommend it. It's very near future. Like, it's pretty contemporary. So you won't have the whole like, where am I? Like, it's not going to be like Neuromancer or anything where it's just like, oh my god, there are like 20 million words I don't know. I have not read Neuromancer, but I feel like what I remember from Ryan when he read it is that he didn't know a lot of the words. because when you make a new world, you add in a lot of words. But for this, it's contemporary, and it's a social sci-fi, which means it's usually softer sci-fi, and I think it's very accessible, and it had short chapters, and sometimes you just want a book with short chapters. That's me sometimes, so I really liked We Are Satellites. I'm so glad we buddy read that together. And then the last sci-fi book we've got, I'd been reading this all summer, actually, and I'll only talk about it briefly because it was a reread, and that's the short story collection Exhalation by Ted Chiang. I just love this short story collection. I want to make another video on it, but I have no idea what video I want to make, because I've already done like a review video, and although I could record a better one, like a better quality one, like I stand by all the words I said in the first one, but it was back in my early channel days, so like the angles and the lighting aren't all what they are now. Not that this is fantastic, but it is better. But I was also thinking of maybe doing like a spoiler video on it or something, tier ranking the stories. I don't know. I want to do another video on these stories because I love them, but I don't know what would be fun for me and interesting for you guys. So if you have ideas, let me know if you are all interested in that type of content. And now let's get into the fantasy section of this wrap-up. So I continued my journey with Lady Trent. I'm sure you've heard, because I keep bringing her up in like every video. So we've got Tropic of Certains and The Voyage of the Basilisks, book 2 and 3. I have transitioned to reading these completely on audio because Kate Redding as the voice of Lady Trent is chef's kiss. I love it so much. I'm currently in the middle of the 4th book and still loving it. I don't even know how. Nothing that interesting happens. Like, there is a plot in every book and there is a climax. Like, I'm not saying interesting things don't happen, but I also like it when not interesting things are happening. I just think it has to be the voice of this character. I just love hearing her talk. I think she's fascinating. She is so cool. She is one of the first, she is the first female dragon natural historian. I don't even know if that's a real title. You study natural history with dragons. She's a female in that field, and this is kind of like a different world, but imagine our world with dragons in the Victorian era, approximately. So kind of Jane Austen vibes is what I've been told. I've only read one Jane Austen, so don't hold me to that if you pick it up and it's completely different. And I love her. I love the threads that connect each story. I love the overarching mystery that we're trying to figure out with these dragons and these ruins, but also just like each book is its own problem or expedition, and it was good. It's so good. I think I might have liked Tropics of Serpents a hair more than the Basilisk, but that's mainly because I really like the jungle they were traveling in. I just thought that was really cool. Another fantasy I read is I finished my reread of The Stone Sky by N.K. Jemisin. I was originally going to immersion read this, but time got away from me, and I was doing a bunch of stuff around the apartment because my apartment, you can't see past this bookshelf, but it's a mess out there. We're going to make it, but it's been a week. Actually, it's not. It's Monday. Anyways, you're seeing this Wednesday. It's Monday right now. But anyways, so I was audio listening to it, which honestly is still so good. I normally like to physically read like my favorite reads because that's just my favorite form of reading. You know, I like my own internal narrator. But Robin Miles is a treasure. I have listened to so many things where she's the narrator at this point, and she might be my favorite audiobook narrator. She's so good at different voices and inflections and bringing the work to life. And especially with Jemisin's prose. Jemisin's prose are so intentional and kind of are meant to evoke a storyteller vibe. So to have someone telling me the story, it's so good. If you don't know, this is the 3rd book in the Broken Earth trilogy. I love this trilogy. I will make a series review, should you read, once I've processed all of my thoughts. Gosh, I thought it would be easier to review it after I reread it, right? And like Leanna did a video for this, and she also had the conundrum of how do you review this series, and I'll leave her series review down below since I don't have mine. And I pretty much agree with everything she says for this one, so I just love it so much. And so is that all the fantasy I've read? Yes. And now the last section, nonfiction. So with nonfiction, I read 2. First one I'll talk about is Cast, which we're going to be doing a live book club discussion on Jess Owen's channel this Sunday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. And so I will have that link down below. That is happening. This is basically the thesis of this nonfiction is America's social status system is a caste system. I don't even know if I phrased that correctly, but the idea is that we function like a traditional caste system, but we don't use that word. And then we compare it to caste systems in India and what happened in Nazi Germany. And it's just an interesting lens to put on things. Like in some ways for me, I didn't learn a lot of new things, mainly because I have over the past couple years been reading a lot of nonfiction about the state of America with race. So I learned a lot of the stuff that this book taught me in other books. But there were still some things that I was like, yikes. But that's in any, history. That's just how it works. I like the lens of it, though. I think the lens of it can be useful in conversation with people who get very defensive about terms like racism and white supremacy, which I don't think people should get as defensive about those terms as they do. But that still happens, and if you want to have a productive conversation, I think the lens of this story can be helpful. At least that's what I think. It really helped me with my identity in ways that I didn't expect. That was my biggest takeaway. I'm Venezuelan American, which is not a box you can check off on any form in America because it doesn't fit into the race caste structure. What is my race? I put it down as I'm white and Hispanic. That's the best I can do, but it always feels weird. And that's because it's an arbitrary class system based off color of skin, and it doesn't even work all the time because there are people who are darker than black people but wouldn't be classified as black if you saw them. It talks about that too. It's so interesting. So I'm excited for this book club discussion. I probably won't be very eloquent whatsoever, but there are 3 other hosts, including Jess, and I am really excited to get more insight because nonfiction is only ever enhanced with discussion. And then I also listened to 100 Years War on Palestine. This is like my first work in recent memory that's more textbook nonfiction, I would call it, where it's less, like the previous one is kind of more, it felt more like journalistic vignettes connected together, also Robin Miles as the narrator. And this one felt more like, I don't know, reading someone's thesis or essay for school. Like it was very nonfiction, like no plot. There's no narrative device used for this other than it did go from 1897. No, it went from 1917 to 2017. So each chapter was like a different chunk of history and talking about a big turning point event. And so this is one of the first books I've read like that in a long time, and it's really helped me make a new mini goal for myself of picking up more modern history works of fiction, especially for this region of the world. Like there were events being mentioned in this that I knew very little about, like in Beirut and stuff like that. I was just like, I should learn more about what happened in Lebanon and like what happened after the Ottoman Empire fell, because I wasn't taught that in school, and I'm interested, and a lot of important political decisions in the United States are made surrounding what's happening in that region. And I just would like to be more informed. And that definitely was a good stepping stone with this work. I definitely learned about some things, and I did like the conclusion of it, how the author's thesis, and he's very close to the subject matter. I mean, he's been working actually a lot on a lot of the potential treaties that could be happening between Israel and Palestine. So he's very close to it. I do think a lot of the time some things were listed so factually I had no emotion. So although I do think all nonfictions are biased based off who you are and where you live and how you're educated, like I just think everyone's a biased individual. You can't separate yourself. I did feel like I was at times just been given facts, and the end of it I thought made a lot of sense with the idea of like, this is where we are now though, and like the solution is not kicking out one group or the other. Like the solution is not that, and here are some ways we could try to reframe the narrative, kind of like what I was talking about in Caste, where you can put like a new lens on something to try and make people, I don't know, not less defensive is one way of looking at it, but just also to make people just more aware of the closer truth of the scenario, because we're always just given what the media tells us, and like, I don't know. I just liked that I filled in this gap. I've been meaning to read this book for months, and I finally did, and it was probably the more challenging read because, like I said, it was like lots of names, lots of dates, lots of places that I didn't know about, and it's not like a fantasy book where I could just like ignore that. It was actually like very important. So yeah, those are all the books, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, read a lot of them. It was really great month. I thought the variety was great. I thought the star ratings reflected that I was enjoying a whole bunch of stuff. Like no new 5-star reads, but everything was 4 and 4.5 stars of the new reads I read. I cannot be mad about that. And it's a glorious stack of books right next to me. So let me know, what were some things you really enjoyed reading in September? Was it a good reading month? Was it a slow one for you, based off whatever speed you go at? Obviously, reading speed and time is extremely subjective. This was definitely way more than I planned to read, but when I looked at it, the page number goal was about where I like it to be, which is about 100 physically read pages a day. So it was mostly just audiobooks and me crocheting a sweater for my friend. And if you want to leave an emoji, ooh, I've already had you guys leave a ghost recently, but I did like my familial haunting section. So leave another ghost or something atmospheric or spooky feeling for you, just because 'tis the season and that was a whole category in this section. And otherwise, like if you liked it, subscribe if you want to, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.